guys. So that was Torrin Wells, Hills, and Valleys. And that was actually the acoustic. I want to try something. That's what I'm talking about.
If you have an hour this week.
So you guys thought that was a better version. I know for some people that don't particularly care for this part of the show, if you're not into that kind of inspirational music. I like to call it inspirational music. If you don't particularly care for that show, once you start the show, right? Like you guys will know that you have that much time, like while I am playing the inspirational music. If you're not into that kind of music, you know that you have a few minutes to, get your snacks in, or get whatever it is that you need. If you want to get like some notebooks and take notes, you have that time to do that, okay? So today is Friday, September 22nd. Friday, September 22nd. And I know everyone likes to get all excited about it being Friday, and I guess it's okay, but Saturday is my Friday because even though it's Friday, I still got to go to bed early. I still got to get up at 5 a.m. I still got to punch that clock by 7. So, and then I'm off Sunday and Monday. So, to me, Saturday is my Friday. Yeah, it's Friday, like woohoo. But Saturday, I'm like, yes, the last day of the week. Anyway, guys, yeah, I was really, really tired today, guys. I think so Tuesday is my Monday, right? So Tuesday is my Monday because that's like I said, I have Sunday and Monday off. So I go back to work on Tuesday. That's my Monday, right? And then Wednesday is my Tuesday. Thursday is my Wednesday. You know, Friday is my Thursday. And Saturday is my Friday, right? So usually Mondays are tough, right? Because I have like Sunday and Monday off. And I try to still go to bed early, even on my days off, because I don't want to get my body off that habit of going to bed by a certain time and waking up, at a certain time. I don't like to get myself off schedule. Like, yeah, I need my schedule, guys. It works for me. Um, so yeah, Tuesday's kind of rough. By Wednesday, I am tired. I was tired yesterday. I'm really tired today. Anyway. So, like I said, that song was Torrin Wells, God of the Hills and the Valleys, right? And I like the song because, when I think about my life, right? And I told you guys this before, right? So when I was a little girl, like way back then, right? And I was in my mom's house, and there was like all these things surrounding me that I didn't understand what was going on, right? Even before I heard the word God, church, religion, Bible, there was always something right in the back of my head, that little voice that would tell me like, this isn't normal, this isn't right. Um, and even though I didn't acknowledge it, like I knew it was always there, but I just didn't know what it was, right? So as life went on, and as I, started growing and maturing and getting older, like I had to learn, what that voice was, and get familiar with it and get in tune to it, and learn about it. Um, and the thing that I like about Torrin Wells, like God of the Hills and Valleys, like I understand now, like when I was that little girl, right? And yes, my life was in danger, right? And I always felt like horrible. Like, even like when I got to that stage, right? That I first started being more in tune to that little whisper in my head, right? And I started to like learn more about the whisper, like what it was, where it was coming from, in relation to my higher power, right? I'm not gonna lie, when I first really started to get to know my higher power, I was angry at him. I just couldn't understand, like, if you're supposed to be this loving and caring being, right? Beyond me, like greater than me, right? My maker, the one who put me here on this earth, right? I just couldn't understand how this higher being, right, can take babies, and put them in situations like that, right? So yeah, I was really angry, with my higher power, right? And then because of what I learned about religion, right? There was a period of time where I felt guilty, I felt ashamed. Um I had fear because I was questioning this higher being, my creator, like, you know, and again, that's why I don't care for religion, right? Because it's just so much confusion, in the thing, right, with people who, right, are trying to teach people about, this loving and caring being, right? You can't try to get someone to open up to a loving and caring being, like give this person hope, let them know that this is where you can go when you need help, and you're broken, and your spirit is hurting, and this person, like he can fix all that, right? But then they tell you, like, you know about heaven and hell, who's going, who's not going. They start talking about sins, you know forgiveness of sins, right? But just because you ask for forgiveness, right, you got to change some things, right? You can't just ask for forgiveness and not change the behavior and think that because you ask for forgiveness, right, that you can still continue this behavior, and this higher being is just going to keep forgiving you over and over again, right? Again, I shared with you about how my dad tells me that my sister's not in heaven, right? I mean, there's just so much about religion, right? And in order for me to be able to trust this higher being, right? To be able to, like, open my heart to this higher being, and let this higher being guide me and love me and care for me, right? I had to believe that this being is a loving and caring being, right? So for me, right, I can't focus on the religious piece. I can't, And then, like I said, then I would feel like fear, guilt, shame, because I was questioning this higher being. I felt like I was being, like, disobedient, or let me slow my brain down, guys. I felt like this higher being would be angry with me, right? For questioning him, right? So there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of doubt, even with building this relationship with this higher being, right? And even though I studied religion, I went to the churches. Like I said, I've had positions in churches. I served, right? But even then, like in the church, like the bishop, some of the church members, I was just like, it's kind of, you get distracted, right? When you're trying to focus on the goal, right? To get closer to this higher being, right? But then you see these other people, they're preaching the good word, and they're doing the service work, and but then there's some behaviors that you see, right? And when you have someone who comes from a neighborhood such as mine, like with a traumatic past in her childhood, right? And you see the behaviors in that environment around those people that was causing you harm, right? And then you go to the house of God, right? And those same people are there. Those same people, the same behaviors are there, right? So now you're like, oh my God, like, am I in the right place? Like, you know what I mean? Like, of course, eventually I know, like they say, you know, church should be more like a hospital. You know, people go there, their souls, they're broken. You know, they got some stuff, right? And they go looking for some relief, right? So I had to learn that, you know, as I continued on my journey of getting to know my higher power. But there's some stuff like, for me, right? I don't care. I don't care what title you have. Guys, so sorry. Put that on silent mode. I forgot to put it on silent mode. I'll have to call them back. But like, I don't care what title you hold. I don't care what position you hold. I don't care how much you claim to be holy, sanctified, religion, all that, right? And it's not about judging, right? Because you don't want to judge people, right? But you have to be able to use discernment, right? Because they say not everybody in church is serving the same God, right? And like I said, there are people in like Catholic churches who've never read the Bible, right? So it's not about judging people. It's about using discernment, you know, and still, like, I went through some things in my childhood, right? That as an adult, if I still see those behaviors in somebody, that wall goes up. I'm good. I'm out. Like, you can be who you need to be, but I'm just going to remove myself. Okay. And like I said, a lot of people from those old neighborhoods, right? Because they never identified, they never acknowledged, they never addressed, right? I know men, right, in their 50s and 60s, right? You guys, which is part of the reason why I'm still single. Like I said, I just got into a relationship. It's been like almost a year now, maybe almost a year, not quite, but even that person, and he's not an addict, right? He doesn't use drugs, right? But his drinking, it's a problem. When I first started dating him, right, he didn't drink around me right away, right? And then as time went on and I did see him drink, I just thought, you know, it was a casual drinking, right? A casual thing, right? Because like I said, like, I'm a recovering addict, right? I've been in recovery for a long time. I have 18 years clean, right? So I have to use discernment and understand that not everybody is an addict, right? I mean, I met him outside my program, right? And he doesn't know anything about hard drug usage, right? But it's drinking. And like I tell people, right? Because a lot of people don't know. Alcohol is a drug, right? And I'm going to give you the cause and the effect of that, right? I know people, right, who have drank alcohol so strongly their whole life, right? There's this thing called wet brain, for those who don't know, right? And what wet brain is, right? Now, I don't know if this is the medical term for it, because alcohol wasn't my thing, guys. It's just that I can't handle alcohol. I can't. I drink a little bit and I'd be like, oh yeah, we're not doing that. So I'm going to look up wet brain just because I want to make sure I'm giving you guys the right language. This is like street language when I say wet brain. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is the definition of wet brain, guys. And if you don't understand it in these terms, I can give it to you in a different language that you can relate to, okay? Wet brain, right? I may not get the medical terminology pronunciation right, but we're going to go for it, okay? Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, sometimes referred to as wet brain, is a brain disorder related to the acute and chronic phases of a vitamin B1 thiamine deficiency. Thiamine depletion is seen in individuals with poor nutrition and is a common complication of long-term heavy drinking, right? And this is why I say education is so important, guys, right? And even if you don't go to school to get the education, like when you're in those neighborhoods, right? And you hear stuff, you got to pay attention. You got to pay attention I pay attention. I don't care, especially if I'm in those neighborhoods. Because like I told you guys, right? A lot of my anxiety stemmed from being in those neighborhoods, right? You couldn't just like come out your house, right? And stand there, right? And not be present. You got to be very aware of what's going on around you, because anything can pop off at any time, right? I told you, I'm from Boston. I grew up in the Roxbury, Dorchester section, right? And I'm going to give you an example of how anything can pop off, okay? So, there was a time when I didn't drive, right? I didn't have a car, right? And I used to have to catch the bus to go to work, right? There was this gang in my neighborhood, and you know, some things was popping off between the gang members, right? It was a drug war. You know, these young people with, you know, where people can stand, like, you know, their block, you know, territorial stuff, right? The insanity. I'm telling you, the insanity, right? So there was these gangs in my neighborhood, and they was going through some territorial stuff, right? About where people were just selling their drugs, right? I was on the bus, right? Two of the gang members, like one guy, he was already on the bus, right? And another guy got on the bus, right? They were two gang members they was going at it, right? They opened fire on the Boston Public Transportation bus. They opened fire on each other. People were like jumping out the windows, hiding under the seats. When I tell you, right, my anxiety stems from being in those neighborhoods. Can you imagine being on the bus, leaving your family in the morning, you know, sending the kid off to school, and you know, planning on seeing them later that day, and you leave your house and you're en route to go to work, right? I remember being one day in a club, right, with one of my aunties, guys. I told you guys, I had an aunt, right, that was 5 years older than me. So I hung with my aunts. And I'm going to tell you, not all my aunties know about, you know, drug addiction. I do have some aunties that they handled their business, right? But anyway, so I was in this club with my aunt, right? We were in the club, music going. We on the dance floor, you know, doing our thing, having a good time. They started shooting in the club. And my auntie, she didn't know what was going on, because when I tell you, right, I pay attention to my surroundings. You know, I don't care where I am. We don't check out, right? This is not the time for that, right? I heard the gunfire, right? So I ducked to the floor, and I went to run behind the speaker to hide, and noticed my auntie, she didn't hear it. She's still on the dance floor. I had to grab her like, Auntie, they're shooting. Yes. Anyway, and I know them holy, sanctified Christian people, right? They like to talk about people like up in the clubs, God ain't in the clubs and, you know, religion stuff, right? I believe in God, right? And I do have a relationship with God, right? But to me, a club is just where people go to mingle and have like you dance for God when you in church. Y'all be jumping and hopping and hollering and yeah, y'all dance too. But other people dance too. And it ain't about all that freaky, nasty grinding stuff. Because sometimes I go to the club, I dance by myself. I just enjoy the music. I love music. I don't care what kind of music it is. I love dancing. God gave me this body. It can move, right? Anyway, we're not going to get on those holy, sanctified people, right? This ain't what that's about, right? So anyway, wet brain. The cause, the effect, right? And for those who don't really know what brain is, right? And I know a couple of people, right? So I know a couple of people who have been drinking alcohol heavily their whole life, right? And as they get older in life, right? Something happens to their brain where they can't, like, if you're having a conversation with them, right? They can't say a whole sentence. They can think it in their head, right? But when they're trying to express it through words, right? They can't. They can't. I know another person, right, who drank heavy their whole life, right? And we're not talking about no street drugs involved. I'm talking just drinking alcohol heavy their whole life, right? This person also started having signs and symptoms of wet brain where he couldn't walk. I think it was a more advanced stage. He couldn't walk. He lived with his mom, right? And his mom is an older woman. Like, at that time, this was, like, I came here to Rhode Island in 2019. And prior to that, I lived in Springfield, Mass. So this was in Springfield, Mass. And these was some neighbors. They lived next door to me. And at that time, I want to say his mom was like in her 70s. She was a little tiny body, older woman. But that lady moved. She caught buses, she go to casinos, like that lady goes, right? But her son, right? He lives with her, right? And she has to care for him because he cannot walk, right? And I'm going to tell you how, for the people, right? Those relationships, right? The relationships, like this is a mother and this is her son, right? And I'm sure the mother, like, it's your son. You love your son. Like, you're going to be there for your son no matter what, right? This lady is in her 70s, right? Her son at the time was probably like in his 40s or 50s, right? And this lady, right, this older woman, right, she would pay people in the community, right, to go to the liquor store to buy alcohol for her son, right? And he would get so drunk, right, when she would try to, like, get him up off the couch in the living room, to go put him to bed. Sometimes they would fall to the floor. And she'd have to have people come over to her house to get him up off the floor for her. Wet brain due to heavy drinking for a long time. Cause, effect, right? Can you imagine being a man in your 40s and 50s, right? You can't walk, you can't bathe yourself, you can't shower yourself, putting that burden on your mother who's in her 70s. This woman's in her 70s. I'm telling you guys, any kind of addiction, whether it's alcohol, drugs, there's consequences. There's consequences. You're affecting those relationships. So anyway, I know I just like really jumped, right? So we was talking about touring wells in the hills and the valleys, right? And I was talking about how while building my relationship with my higher power and growing into it, you know, getting older, and learning about religion and this and that, and having to use discernment, right? Because I needed to have a relationship with something greater than myself, something that was loving and caring, something that was good, something that could guide me, right? And there was a period of time, like I said, where I was totally against this relationship with this higher being because there was some stuff going on in the world, right? And I could not make the correlation. I could not understand. I didn't get it, right? I didn't get it, right? But then, like, as I continued to grow, right, in that relationship, right, and I kept learning about it, right, and I kept talking to it, and I kept focusing on it, right, eventually, right, a light bulb went off, right? And you know what he said to me? He said, I've always been with you, my child. Even when you didn't know I was there. I was there. Remember how I told you guys, right? That along my journey, right? A lot of people didn't make it, right? They didn't make it, right? And I've been in some situations, guys, right? I should have been dead more than once, more than twice, more than 3 times. So when I'm thinking about all that stuff, right, and I'm focusing on all that stuff, right, I realize, right, it wasn't me that got me out of them situations. It wasn't me. It was my higher power. Like, yes, I was in the lion's den, right? But he didn't let that stuff really touch me, even though I experienced some stuff, even though I went through some stuff. Like, that stuff didn't touch me here. That stuff didn't touch me here. We're talking about the gifts, right? The gifts. Because we go through some stuff, right? But if you pay attention, some gifts came along with that stuff. Example, right? I told you guys how harmful my mom was to me, right? Growing up as a kid, right? But I'm going to tell you as a woman, right? I keep my stove clean. I keep my oven clean. I keep my refrigerator clean. I don't like dirty dishes in my sink. You will never find dirty dishes in my sink, guys. I clean my bathroom. The gifts, right? Y'all better recognize the gifts. The fact that I'm still alive is a gift. Yes, I have a mental health condition, right? But I can manage it, right? I can still work every day. I don't got to sit home and collect the Social Security check. The gift. Through all that stuff my parents been through, right? Both my parents are still here on this earth and they're in their 70s. The gift. I told you guys, right, about my sister, right? And her children, right? The young daughter, she reached out to me, right? Had God not protected me, right? And kept me here on this earth, I would have never been here for that young daughter of my sister to reach out to me. The gift. That's not what today's session was about, right? But we're still on point, right? We're talking about cause, effect, and relationships, right? Even the relationship you have with your higher being, right? It's a relationship, right? We're going to move on. So I wrote this little thing here, right? And I'm going to read it to you guys, right? And again, we're talking about the relationship with my higher being, okay? So as a little girl, right? Living in those neighborhoods, right? I lived in fear, guys. I lived in fear. And if you read my book, right? God's gift to you, right? And I know I talk a lot, guys, but I'm telling you, the stuff I talk to you about here, you still got to read the book because I don't give it away. You have to read the book. There's a lot of information in this book, right? Illustrations, stories, my journey, right? I don't give the book away. Even though we do these sessions, guys, I talk around stuff. You still got to read the book, right? So, there was a time, right? In my early years, right? I didn't know fear, right? And then one day it was just there, right? Out of nowhere, right? And because, right, of my higher power, and the love and the care that he had for me, right? I'm going to use this term. When I say fear, I'm going to tell you guys healthy fear, right? And I'm going to tell you about healthy fear, right? The healthy fear was my gift of discernment. That even before I knew my higher power was there, right? Even though I was in the lion's den, right? And I was in harm's way, right? I made it out, guys. I made it out. I made it through some horrific stuff, guys, right? Healthy fear. Healthy fear, like, everybody has fear, right? And the thing is, there's a balance, right? Because it's like okay, it's like this, right? When you're trying to teach your child, right, about the dangers of the world, right? Children get kidnapped, children get sexually molested, children get abused, they get bullied, right? So you got to teach your young child about these things, right? But you don't want to put fear in them, right? You don't want them too afraid to go out that door and go on with their day, right? There is unhealthy fear and there is healthy fear, right? And healthy fear is those warning signs. Those bells are going off. They're trying to tell you something, right? That fight or flight moment. We're going to move on. So when we talk about mental health awareness, right? We're talking about identify, acknowledge, and then address. Because sometimes I tell you guys, and I only tell you too, I say identify and address. What is actually identify, you got to be able to know what's going on, right? And then you have to acknowledge it. Because sometimes you identify some stuff, but you don't acknowledge it, right? You see it and you keep it moving, right? You can't just identify without acknowledging that it's there, that it exists, right? And then you got to get to addressing it. So I like to say 3 stages. Identify, acknowledge, address. Because some people, right, they can identify it and not acknowledge it or address it. Like they see it, they know it's there, but they don't care. So you have to not only identify it, right? You have to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge it. And these 3 steps, right? They take time. There's going to be a period of time where you're just in identifying mode, right? You're going to be there for some time, right? Before you get to the acknowledgement, right? And then you're going to be there for some time, right? And then you finally get to that addressing stage, right? And even when you get to that addressing it stage, it's still going to take some time. Every stage takes time, and one stage may not take as much time as the next stage, right? Each stage is different. I told you, even when I identified the stuff that was there, right? I was in denial. I was like, nah, not me. And then it got so bad that I had no choice but to acknowledge it. Like this thing was there, and it was making me weak. It was making me sick. I had to acknowledge it, right? And then we go through this stage where we acknowledge it, right? But then we're in, we got to go through some feelings. This stuff comes with some feelings, right? You got to go through some feelings, right? You got to start like paying attention, right, to what's going on around you, right? And then when you do address it, you got to do some reading, you got to do some research. There's some work you got to do. I want to go back to the religion aspect, okay? Do you know some people, right? These religious people, right? They say God can fix anything, right? Because I went through this, right? I went through this. God can fix anything, right? God can heal anything, right? You just got to pray about it, right? And I'm not saying there's some things God can't do, right? But there's some work you got to do. It's like asking God to guide you to a position, to a job, right? You pray. But if you sit on that couch and you don't start sending out them resumes and making them phone calls, you can pray all you want. That job ain't going to come to you. And this is what I mean by religious, holy, sanctified people, right? Like, because some people, they do have the information, they do have the knowledge, but their teaching skills. Their teaching skills. How are they delivering that information, right? Teaching skills is not just about having the information. Like the delivery's got to be on point. The timing's got to be on point. People got to be open. And some religious people, right? It's like they're stuffing it down your throat. They're stuffing it down your throat. They're stuffing it down your throat, right? Like trying to shove it down there. They come at you like, and when you are dealing with a broken spirit, right? There's some things you got to do to that spirit before you start giving it information. You got to get that spirit in position to receive that information, right? And then, right? This is where I ran into trouble with my mental health, right? These religious people, these holy, sanctified people, right? They got their own way of thinking when it comes to mental health medication, right? And I had to get to a place where I had to tell myself, you know what, right? God gives people gifts, right? Like, yeah, we have our struggles with healthcare, right? We have those moments where, co-pays, financial reasons, some people give you poor service, right? But I can't be a doctor. God, that's not the gift that God gave me. God gave people gift to make medication, like, right? And let's take it even further back, right? Maybe God knew. He knew that some of his people were going to be broken in some places, right? So he had to make people to make the medicine to give to the people. Don't let them holy, religious, sanctified Christian people stop you from seeking treatment. Don't let them instill their ideas, right? Because they're not the ones that's suffering. They're not the ones in this pain. Like I said, in my most critical moments, right? My brothers was not there with me. My sister was there with me at some points, and mom was there. And even dad has experienced some stuff with me. But what I'm saying is, right, when I was in those real critical moments, right? Because, the shame, the guilt, I didn't want nobody to see me like that. I didn't want my family to see me like that. So I used to hide and cry, hide and go through. Right? So when these religious, holy, sanctified people, right, they start, just like, those communities that instilled, right, that misinformation about psychiatrists and counseling and mental health meds. Like, some people will have you stuck. You listen if you want to. Some people will have you stuck, right? And when it came to my faith, right, I had to realize, like, God gave these people gifts. If God didn't make these people, right, and give them the knowledge, the wisdom to create, like, mix these chemicals and create these things, right? God must have knew there was going to be a need for it. So yes, I prayed. I went through a period of time where, I was stuck, right? I'm sick. I need the help, right? But I couldn't move because I couldn't get past the things that were instilled in me, right? The myths, the misinformation, people's attitudes, people's opinions, right? I had to get past that stuff. They weren't the ones suffering, guys. Thank God that he gave other people gifts that I don't have. Thank God. And that's why I feel the way I feel about religion. Like, I know my higher power, right? I know he's a loving and caring being, right? And I trust him, right? And I let him guide me, right? Because, right, your relationship with your higher power, right, may be different than this person and their relationship with their higher power, which might be different from my relationship with my higher power. It's not the same. That's the problem I have with religion. I just feel like my higher power knows me good, bad, and indifferent, and he loves me anyway. Don't you let them people mess your head up. Don't do it. Because I had to stop listening to the people, right? And start listening to my higher power. He said, don't worry about them people. Come with me. I got you. Their opinions don't matter. Keep your eye on me. We're going to move on. Now remember, we're on cause and effects, right? Had I listened to those holy, Christified religion, fear-God people, right? I wouldn't be where I am today. And you cannot play with a mental health condition, because I'm going to tell you, I told you guys before, right, about the voices, right, that tell you to harm yourself, right? They're talking to you, right? Again, we're on cause, effects, and relationships, right? And I'm going to shut it down, right, real soon, right? But this is where I want to leave you guys, okay? You know, I always tell people, right? You have to take your time and get to know people. You might date someone for like 3 to 6 months, right? And you think they're the one, right? You're moving too fast. Because real people don't even show up that quick. Everybody, when they meet someone and start dating, is going to put their best forward, right? You're going to put on that show. You're going to show them, like, I'm a good person. I can do this. I can do that. I can do this. I can do that, right? But what you perceive to show, right, it's got to last. It's got to be consistent. Give it some time, right? Because eventually, that real person going to show up. Example, right? Now, I know it seems like I'm talking about my parents, right? Or, again, this ain't about my parents. This is not about downgrading them. This is not trying to embarrass them, right? I love my parents. And let me tell you, don't play with my parents. Don't play with them, right? But I got to give you the information. I got to give you the knowledge, right? The discernment that God gave me, right? And I've had these conversations with my parents. Oh, yeah. When Dad met Mom, right, in their younger years, right, and he started having children with my mom, he didn't know my mom. He never met her parents. He didn't know anything about her. Nothing. He didn't know she had a mental health condition. He didn't know that because she had a mental health condition, that there was a possibility that her children may be born with a mental health condition. He didn't know, right? My dad didn't know my mom's nationality. All he seen was a black woman. And we all know there's no such thing as just a black person, right? Like, you have people from Liberia, from Ghana, Nigeria. It's so much, guys. West Indian, African, Jamaican, Trinidad. He just seen a black woman. He didn't know her nationality, right? It's so important to get to know people before you tie yourself down to them, guys. And that stuff takes time. It takes time. Now, I'm sure for most quote unquote normal people, right, that grew up in those middle class neighborhoods, right, that wasn't flooded with people dealing drugs, people abusing drugs, people who didn't finish high school and never furthered their education past whatever grade level they stopped at, right? So when I say in most normal situations, that may not be a factor. But if you come from the neighborhood that I come from, right? And I know there's other people that came up out of those neighborhoods, right? Because we grow up and we all move to, different parts of, cities, towns. Maybe we move to another state over, right? But they're all the same people. You're still dealing with the same people, right? And I'm going to tell you for the men, right? Now, I ain't never been to jail. Let me back that up a little bit. As an adult, okay? If you guys read my book, I'm talking 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, right? We're not talking like, I want to say, by the time I turned 14 years old, right? I've never been arrested. I'm laughing because I told you guys I have a weird sense of humor. Anyway, so from the time I was 14, right? I've never been arrested. I've never been to jail. All the way through up until now, right? But I have brothers, right? And I have male friends. And I was with a young black man for 18 years, right? I've seen people go in and out of jail, men and women, right? Like I said, from the time I was 14 up until now, I've never been to jail, right? But I've watched family members, I've watched loved ones, I've watched friends, right? And every time they go in jail and come back out, they come back different, guys. So I would like to think, right, when people go to jail, it's a traumatic experience, right? Because there's some things that go on behind them walls in jails, right? You got all these people, right? We're going to say like the jail, right? We're going to say this community, right? You got all these people in the walls or behind the walls, right? This community behind the walls in jail, right? All these people from all these different neighborhoods, right? That might have had traumatic childhood growing up, that might be experiencing with some drug addiction situations, the violence, guys, okay? So you got all these people behind the walls in this community amongst each other. You think stuff don't go on there? How about this? I've seen women that I've known for years, right? Straight women, right? They go to prison or go to jail. They come back. They ain't straight no more, guys. They're not straight no more. They're either bi or gay. Women. So you can't tell me stuff don't go on in the prison behind them walls, right? And whatever went on there, right? Whatever went on there, right? When they get released back into society, right? So you go in one way, right? And you come back a different person. As if your life wasn't traumatic enough. You had to have done some things, right? To get arrested to go into that jail, right? So as if your life wasn't traumatic enough, right? Now you go in prison or jail behind the walls, right? And you experience some more traumatic stuff, right? And now you come back out into the world that you left behind. And I'm not saying, right? I know for sure, right? Like I said, I've been in recovery for many years, guys, right? I know, like, in prison or jail or whatever, like, they have NA programs. They have AA programs. I know people in prison go to school. Some of them come out with degrees, right? But not everybody takes advantage of those opportunities. And then, right, people have that pride. They have that ego, right? Like I said, I've seen how people respond to me when they find out that I have a mental health condition, right? So some people, right? Some people, and I've seen it, right? People who are undereducated, they're embarrassed of that stuff. They don't want nobody to know that part about them. People who struggle with reading, like if you're like in your 30s and your 40s and you struggle with reading, you never learn how to read or you can't do it that well, that stuff is embarrassing. They hide that stuff. They don't want nobody to see them like that. Like my mental health condition. I hid it from my family for a long time until I couldn't anymore. But yeah, because the world can be so cruel when they find out you have a weakness. And I'm not even going to say my mental health condition is a weakness, because for me, right, my mental health condition saved me, right? Because these same people, right, that I grew up with in my environments, in my communities, that were on the same journey that I was on, right? These same people that have experienced these traumatic things, right? And now they have these behaviors. They're like bouncing up against the walls, doing the same thing over and over again. When they know it doesn't work, right? Because of my mental health condition, right? I had to work harder on some stuff. I had to overcome some stuff, right? And again, with my mental health condition, right? Because I had to work harder and I had to educate myself. I had to do therapy. I had to do counseling. I had to take meds, right? I was the sanest one in them people. The people who don't think they need a psychiatrist or don't think they need counseling or don't think they have an issue or don't think they need help, right? But yet the behaviors, you're watching them, right? So even though I have a mental health condition, right, I'm the sanest one in the bunch. I told you, I've always been the leader in my family as far as my mom, my brothers, my sisters. I was always there trying to take care of this one and carry this one and guide this one and go after that one. So you guys got to be careful, right? When you find out somebody's weakness, right? Or you think it's a weakness, right? Because you don't really know. You're misjudging stuff, right? I'm going to tell you what this one last thing, and then we're going to end it, right? And we'll pick up from where we left off. Cause, effect, relationships, right? I told you guys, right? My mother was taken from her mother when she was 7 years old, never to see or hear from her mother again, right? And she didn't have any siblings, so there was no brothers and no sisters. It was just her, right? Mom told me that her mother went crazy and died in a mental institution, right? And I had to tell my mom, people don't just go crazy and die because they go crazy. There had to have been some other issues or conditions or, other health things involved, right? I mean, I don't know of people that go crazy and die because they go crazy. And what is going crazy? What does that mean? Right? So because mom, right, was taken from her mother when she was 7 years old, never to see or hear from her mother again, she ended up getting adopted. She grew up in a foster home, right? So maybe mom didn't even know this mental health condition, maybe, right, inherited, passed down from generation to generation to generation, right? Which is why I say, when you meet someone, you're out there dating and you meet someone, you better take your time and get to know them. They, like, they may not have, like, outside medical concerns that is visual to the eye, right? But that deep-rooted stuff, cause and effect. So here you have a young woman, 7 years old, right? Taken from her mother, never to see or hear from her mother again. Her father died when she was 19 years old and she didn't have any siblings, right? And she has to navigate through this life. Even though she was adopted, right? There was issues with her and some members of the family that adopted her, right? So sometimes you're not really alone. You got your tribe, you got your people, right? But if there's some things in there, right, you don't really feel connected. You're alone. And to make matters worse, right? Apparently my grandmother, my mother's mother, had a sister, right? And it was the sister who called the Department of Social Services on my mother's mother, right? My grandmother's sister, and had them remove my mother from her mother's household when she was 7, right? I think they said there was like some alcoholism involved. Apparently grandma has some issues. I don't know, right? Do you guys know, like, right? My mother, she has an aunt, right? And my mother, she had a relationship with this aunt, right? And I never understood, like, how is that your aunt? Like, where did she come from? Like, apparently she was my grandmother's sister, right? Do you guys know, right? My mother's aunt, right? Her so-called mother's sister, right? She knew where my mother's mother was all these years and never told her. My grandmother, right? We grew up in Boston, right? My grandmother was close to us in Boston, right? In an institution, right? And her sister, who called Department of Social Services on her and had them remove my mom from her, right? Always knew where the woman was and never told my mom. Like, my mother's children never met her mother. And we lived in the same city, the same town. These family members, those relationships. And real quick, I'm going to end with this and we can revisit that stuff later, right? I'm going to tell you how my mother found out her mother passed away, right? Years later, right? We were all grown up now, right? So another family member in my mother's family passed away. And my mother went to that person's funeral, right? And I guess people were surprised that my mom showed up for that family member's funeral, right? So they started scrambling around my mother, right? The obituary of that family member who passed away, right? My grandmother's name was in that obituary, with the date that she passed on. That's how my mother found out her mother was dead. And I just thought, Mom, I don't know what kind of horrible people you claim to be related to, right? Like, why would your aunt not tell you where your mother was? Why would she keep your mother from you, from your children meeting her? Like, I don't care what the situation was. And then allow you to go to another family member's funeral only to find out at that funeral that your mother had passed on. They never told her. They never gave her the information so she could go to her mother's funeral. I don't know, like, people say, like, this stuff is normal or whatever the climate is that we live in this world today where people think this stuff is normal. That's not what my higher power tell me. My higher power don't tell me that stuff is normal. And nobody can make me believe it is. I don't think that stuff is normal. And you know my mom, right? I told you guys she never cries, right? Never cries, never show no emotion. I don't think that's normal. I don't think it's normal. Because, hmm, let me find out, right? That somebody knew where my mom was, right? And even when my mom passed, right? And they don't tell me? No. No. I mean, we can't be friends. We can't be nothing, not alone family. No. If you even felt like you never wanted to tell my mom where her mom was, at least give her the opportunity to go say goodbye. You guys, I'm telling you, this stuff is deep rooted. Generational trauma, relationships, right? Cause and effect, right? We do things to people not realizing that there's some other people tied to that person. You're not just hurting her, you're hurting her children because you never gave her children the opportunity to meet her mother, their grandmother. Who does that? Even when we were all adults. I can even see if you guys wanted to keep that from us when we were babies or children or whatever. But even as adults, it's just so many key factors missing, right? When it comes to my relationship with my mother, like there's so many things that I don't know about this woman. There's too many key pieces missing, right? And then you have a family member over here who has those missing pieces and she held on to them. Even concerning, like, say my grandmother did have some mental health issues, right? Maybe that's like potent information. That's something that, had me and my sister been aware of as when we became young women, right? It would have helped to clear up some stuff. It would have maybe made the journey a little bit easier had we had the information, had we had the knowledge. I'm not crying, guys. I'm a little oily. I guess you could say I see my skin shining. So anyway, we're going to stop there, guys. I got my light on today because I noticed when I start my video, right, once it started getting darker outside, my video would get dark and I don't be having my light on. So today I put my light on. So anyway, guys, we're getting there. We are getting there. I'm thinking about where I'm going with that. I'm going to wait on that. Because like I said, we need to start shutting it down. Yeah. Talking about cause, effects, and relationships. Those relationships outside the romantic ones with the mate, the boyfriend, the spouse, husband, wife. We didn't even get to the romantic stuff yet, guys. This is just, and it's all leading somewhere, okay? It is all gonna lead somewhere. And I know it might seem like I'm just talking about me and it's all about me, but I'm giving you I'm sharing with you my experiences, right? So if you have stories that, are in close proximity of what I'm sharing with you, right? There's some stuff that we got to work through. I need you guys to be taking notes, and not my notes, not my story. Like when I say something, right? If you have your own story, right? You guys need to be writing this stuff down. You know, we gotta get to the root of it, right? We gotta get down deep in there. We gotta pull all that stuff out, right? Because let me tell you this thing that I learned, right? They say sometimes God breaks us down, right? So he can rebuild us better. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to break all this stuff down and make room and clean it out so we can start building you up to the better version of you. So that's my hopes in all this, right? Like some of us are not addicts. Some of us may just have a mental health condition that may have had some traumatic experiences through their journey, some stuff that they don't understand that could be just now showing up. Maybe they're having some signs and symptoms. You know, there's a lot of confusion. They're trying to figure it out. And then you have people with the dual diagnosis that have the mental health aspect as well as the disease of addiction aspect. So, you know, you guys got more stuff going on, right? And again, right, I am just talking around stuff, right? For me to go deeper, right, I'm going to have to put myself in position, right, to do some one-on-one where there will be a fee involved. And I'll try to make it as affordable as I can, right? But I'm always going to do these free sessions for those who don't have the money, because whether you have the money or not, I still want you to get better. But for those who don't do the one-on-one sessions, like, you know, I'm hoping that you guys are going to them doctors, you know, you're having conversations with them doctors, you're seeking treatment. Like for me, right, I had a few programs I had to do. There was just so much going on, right? So yeah, I did psychiatry, I did counseling, and I'm gonna tell you the difference between counseling and psychiatry for those who don't know, right? So counselors you go to once a week, right? And you just sit there and you talk about some stuff, you work through some stuff, but counselors can't prescribe the meds. Okay? So that's why I did counseling and psychiatry, because when it came to them wanting to introduce the medication piece, that's where the psychiatrists come in, okay? So don't relate psychiatry to crazy, okay? Counselors do not prescribe. Psychiatrist prescribes. Like I said, if there's any information that you guys can think of that I might have the answers to, leave me a message. If you don't want to go into the messages with other people on this page, like I said, I have a professional Facebook page, Johnny B. Hopkins Author. You can leave me messages there. I do check my messages. It might take me a day or two, right? A day or two. It will not be that long, right? There's some people you can hit me up on Messenger. Like if you have Facebook or whatever and you friend me or whatever, like then we can do through Messenger, right? Any way that I can help people, okay? I'm here, okay? I want you guys to have a great, great, great evening. Again, don't be so hard on yourself. Things take time. It will get better. I'm in my 50s. I've been doing a long time. I've seen people that didn't make it, guys. They didn't make it. But you have the opportunity, right? To do better, to go a different route, you know, to reach out, ask for help. You know, don't worry about what other people say. This is about your life, right? I hope you guys enjoyed today's session, and I hope you will come back and see me again. Okay? Bye.